I'm Bryan Babcock. I've been making wine here at our family vineyard and winery for the better part of 30 years. The first decade was the decade of trying to identify which end was up. The second decade I often describe as the decade of trying to figure out which road to take. And the third decade that we're into now has really been all about refinement and mastering the craft. So I couldn't be happier with the product. It's been a long road, but I feel like I'm finally really, from the standpoint of the craft, really right where we want to be. I've got a bottle of our Ocean's Ghost Pinot Noir. So this is our estate-grown Pinot, which has been made from the system of farming. System of farming, we're still trying to discover a name for it. But essentially, it's a raised platform system where the starting position for the growth is about at eye level versus the status quo. This is the status quo. This is what 99.9% of people in fine wine growing are doing. It's essentially called vertical shoot positioning. All the shoots, which would otherwise be growing naturally in all kinds of different directions, are forced into this vertical direction with wires, with a trellis. Vertical shoot positioning. It took me 25 years to realize how rigid. This is a very rigid system, and that everything is forced. All the canopy is forced into, there's about maybe 6 inches of width here in the system, and it's all wadded together. You're taking the vine and you're forcing it to do something it doesn't really want to do. Okay, so here we are back in my vineyard. You can see just by looking down the vine row, much more natural presentation of grapevines. They're basically growing spontaneously, more or less naturally, in the wind, engaging, moving, undulating. There's no wiring in the fruiting zone. And this is a beautiful thing, because when you can create a looseness for the canes, they can rock this way, they can move, and you can see that the whole vine can shift and move in the wind. What we're trying to do here is create a dance with the crop and the sun. So you can see how there's a cluster right there that's actually in the sun. And these, you can see the tip of this cluster is getting some sun as the vines move with the wind. What we're actually doing at this time of the year is we're coming through and we're trying to detangle the vines a little bit. We're taking their tendrils and separating. Once we establish a completely free-floating vine, then we'll come through and that will tell us, it'll help guide us in terms of what kind of leaf pulling we should do on this side of the canopy. We call it scooping or tunneling. We do want there to be some openness in the fruiting zone because we want to mitigate any mildew pressure. We want to mitigate bunch rot pressure. There needs to be some openness so that the fruit can engage with airflow and that it can dance with the sun. I mean, that's it. That will make great wine. And it's so simple. It boggles my mind that it took me 30 years to figure it out. It's so simple. See these guys are a little tangled? Watch what happens when we just open these up. Now the vine can dance. Sometimes we help the vine decide which side it wants to be on. But now basically the entire vine can move. There it is right there. You can see the whole thing. Our estimation at this point is that about 50% sun, 50% direct sunshine on the crop through the growing season makes the best wine. See these clusters? I mean, now it's in the sun, now it's in the shade. You know, we figure if you're gonna put nice wine in it, you might as well have some good hardware. Hot off the press. I love the theme of amplification and volume. So I like wines that are big and that are rich and that make me in my mind interested in drinking them immediately. I love flavor. But the trick and the key is that if you're going to make big wine, it also needs to be balanced. I don't want it to be overly ripe. I don't want it to have too much alcohol, too much tannin. A lot of times in an attempt to generate flavor, you can create wines that are sort of, out of whack in some proportion, be it the tannin or the alcohol or the acidity. And if you can get these things harmoniously all kind of juxtaposed so that they're all pushing against each other perfectly, then it's like having a good pair of speakers for your music. You can turn up the volume a little more if you've got great speakers. This is just a baby. It's got great proportions, a lot of beautiful, rich extraction, good tannins. I don't see why this wine wouldn't age really well for 10 years. 15, probably 20. I might be a little tired, at the 20-year mark, depending on how it's cellared. Chardonnay grows beautifully right alongside of the Pinot in the Santa Rita Hills. We do really well with Chardonnay, and we grow a little bit of Pinot Gris, which is another white grape that likes the cool climate. And I feel like we're finally mastering Sauvignon Blanc, which can be challenging in a cool climate because there's so much flavor. It can be very herbaceous, it can be kind of green. And so if you can get that under control and build the big high volume wine but have it taste good, you have to be in the right window of flavor for Sauvignon Blanc. And it took us a while, but I feel like we're getting that mastered now as well. In the winery, from the standpoint of making different wines, now that we have access to some of these astonishing vineyards in the Santa Rita Hills, we put together a portfolio for our wine club. It's called Terroir Extraordinaire. There are 7 Pinots currently and 2 Chardonnays there. So they're not only single vineyard wines, but they're single little. The thing is, what you want to do is wiggle your way into not only the best vineyards, but the best blocks. And not every acre within a great vineyard is the same. And so if you can discover those little nooks and crannies that just make the sublime, those are the blocks you want to work with. I'd like to say something about our wine club. We have 4 of them at the moment. So we have the Terroir Extraordinaire portfolio all by itself, where you can take delivery of a bottle each of the single vineyard wines, single block wines. And then we do a number of other things too. We make a very good Santa Rita Hills Pinot, a very good Santa Rita Hills basic flagship Chardonnay. Playing once again with Cabernet Franc, we have a product called Bright Fortune, which is kind of our fortune cookie take on winemaking. We have a white wine that we make from Grenache, from red Grenache. It's a white wine. It's called Identity Crisis. We have made some wines called Soulstruck from different varieties. And so we've got a number of things going on, clinging to my favorite blocks of Cabernet Sauvignon from the interior and the eastern side of the valley where it's warmer. I think Rancho Sisquoc grows some of the most beautiful Syrah on the Central Coast, so I make a cuvee of Syrah from the McMurray bench. It's called Upper Crust. So there's a whole number of different wines that are delivered in various clubs. There's a red-only club, and there's kind of a basic club, even though it's not real basic because the wines are kind of fun and crazy. Well, I think in the beginning it really started with my family and my mom and dad, who were in the restaurant business in Southern California, and that was always their theme from the beginning at Walt's Wharf in Seal Beach, was customer service. And now that my wife Lisa has been helping us with the tasting room, Lisa is a retail goddess. She's an animal. And she gets it. She totally gets customer service. And so every time we sit down with our staff, we're having a meeting, we're tasting through everything, getting all caught up in what's going on. Lisa, she will continue to say the same thing. People, we have to kill them with kindness. These are our customers. And walk through the front door, as soon as their eyes adjust, and I see this happen every day, because it's just a little dark in there, and people will go in and their eyes adjust, and they see the taste of them. Wow! And she wants that to continue, that feeling. We have an event every spring. It's been in conjunction with our Vintners Association and the Santa Barbara County Vintners Festival. We have had typically an open house either on the Saturday of the festival, or this last time we tried it actually on a Sunday, the day after. It was very successful. We've also been trying to do something in the fall, harvest party, usually in conjunction with a couple of the charities, local charities. and we try to have a band and some music and maybe a couple food trucks. And then we do have occasional, we call pickup parties for our wine club. We have a number of wine club members that don't want us to ship their wines to them and want to come here and pick them up, and so we'll roll out the bread and cheese and open up all the new releases that they have just received or that they're about to receive, and get a little sneak preview. Those are usually really fun. 20 years ago, I was a bigger winery. I was making 25,000 cases. Now we're a little 10,000 case winery, and much more interested in reaching a direct audience. And when you do develop an audience that's appreciative, it's a great mojo. It's like you want to have the party, you want to roll out the cheese and open the wines, because they're just such great people, and they're so appreciative.
I'm Lisa Babcock, and we are now sitting in what used to be the original Babcock tasting room. About 4 to 5 years ago, when we were having a party in our warehouse, our then warehouse, I suggested to Bryan, why don't we turn that into our tasting room? Because we were able to have a really fun party. And it was basically like a sort of a shell, like a plywood kind of ugly warehouse that was not anything special. This used to be where our bar was. This was the main tasting room for over 20 years. And it was just sort of, nothing that is in here now was in here. There was basically like an oak bar and not really even any seating, because there wasn't really any room for seating. So when we moved to there, I decided to turn this. I love music, as you can tell. This is sort of a tribute to that, and so since then I've continued to collect, and it's morphed into a whole area of selling vinyl and all kinds of stuff in there. So this room can be rented out for private parties. We've had some really great things going on in here, as well as just for people just to hang out. So it's basically open to the public at any time. But you can see all those old odes to all these fabulous ladies from the 60s and 70s, and all these fabulous singers, songwriters, rock and roll bands, some cool magazine stuff up there. It's just kind of a real ode to the past. So we call this the Soul Struck Lounge, and that's actually part of our whole umbrella of the brand Soul Struck, which is really about kind of connecting with the souls that are kind of around us, the past, the present. So that's kind of the beginning of the story. Big picture, I want people to feel warmth and comfort and ease in that environment. I want it to be really like, hang out here, come with friends, or come alone and read a book, or listen to music and hang out. And I think wine is something that brings people together, and it's a beautiful thing. So I want the experience to kind of unfold for each person as they like.